where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe. I'm your regular Wednesday evening host here at BodyBags. It is a random week, and I thought I would just kind of go revisit one of a number of very excellent movies we call the Tombs of the Blind Dead series from the great Amando de Ossorio. These are Spanish films from the very early days as the dictator Franco is on his way out. I remember due to death, and as that transition is happening in Spain, what you're seeing is the sort of coming to life in the country of decades upon decades of dictatorship post, in the lead up and post through World War II. And so the likes of, trying to think of his name, Amando de Ossorio, amongst a handful of others, will start to sort of breathe a new sense of life into the world of cinema. And one of the first early gifts that we get, of course, is the Tombs of the Blind Dead series. And if by chance you are unfamiliar with these, he begins, of course, with these are, the three of the four I got from Blue Underground. The other was a Scream Factory release, but Tombs of the Blind Dead. Of course, the one I'm looking at today, Return of the Evil Dead, or Blind Dead, if you will. The Ghost Galleon. Many consider it the weakest entry. It definitely has its moments. And of course, the Scream Factory release of Night of the Seagulls, his fourth final entry, and a bit of a Lovecraftian slant to this one as well. But these do. This is a gift. This is a gift to cinema in the sense that is a birth of a new monster. The Templar Knights, who back in the olden days began as helping the pilgrims from Europe get to on their pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Got a little too wealthy and a little too powerful for the likes of France, who then insist upon the church that this group of Templar Knights are disbanded and its leader executed. And from that point forward begins the sort of mythology that is born out of that and all of the different things. And out of that is the Blind Dead mythology that is born. And so you kind of got this idea running that these knights are captured and their eyes are burned out of their skulls and they're put to death for their satanic ritualism, and of course there is a vow to return and to go after those responsible. And so you got four really, in a sense, completely different pieces, but they all sort of go together because it's the same sort of brand, right? And so each one sort of brings its own unique sense to you. And the second one, it's argued which is better, the first or the second one. And the second one has this idea of just amplifying to a much bigger degree than the first film. And basically you open it up with sort of a look back at this town who is able to get their hands on these Templar Knights, and they execute them. And in order to keep them from finding their way back, because there is a curse pronounced by its leader that they will in fact come back and execute these people at some point out in the future. And so they burn their eyes out of their sockets, and then they burn them up, and then they bury them outside of the town limits. And so every year they sort of celebrate this thing. So we're now about 500 years later, and they're having this big thing, right? And so enter Tony Kendall, who plays Jack. There's a couple of moving pieces here. He's sort of in charge of, in his latter days, I think he had military service and whatnot, but now he's doing a lot of side job things, and one of them involving firework displays. And so he's asked by this town to come and just basically head up this celebration in terms of its fireworks display. The girl who Vivian Esperanza Ray or Roy Ray Vivian, who is the sort of tied to the mayor of this town, but has had a fling in the past with Jack. Those two sort of kind of re-hit things up, and we find out that it's due to her that he's even there really to begin with. The mayor doesn't like this, and so he has it out for Jack, right? But then you got this town weirdo, this sort of the outcast, right, who is constantly being picked on and whatever, treated as the social outcast. He is well aware of the legends and the mythology and just the trueness in his mind that these blind dead are coming back. But he decides to sort of make sure this happens on the 500th year anniversary. And so he abducts a girl from the village and basically has her out there over the burial site and will execute her. And as her blood seeps into the ground, the dead will begin to rise as this party is on full scale in the town. They are, unbeknownst to them, the Templar Knights are rising and taking their places on their dead horses. There's so much about this that is so neat, whether it's the skeletal dead horses or the blind dead and the aesthetics and how they look. Quite ingenious, sort of why I love Lucio Fulci's zombie aesthetically, just for how they look, versus Romero's Dawn of the Dead and that sort of pasty look. These seem to be more zombie, the way you would assume they would come out of the earth, especially centuries old. And so they come up and they rise up. Well, Murdo, who is the outcast, he just assumes, man, he is going to basically lead the vengeance party into this town. And he's sort of disgruntled immediately. Not only is he an outcast of the town, but he's an outcast by the Templar Knights. They do give him the gift of just leaving him alive, at least initially. And so they head off to town, and they will stop. They will stop along the way at this one place that's outside of the town limits, where we have another character who is the daughter of somebody pretty strong up, who is really begrudgingly sort of entertaining this guy, and ultimately that will get broken up. And he will ultimately die, the guy will, but she will escape, and she does so in the coolest of ways. She is able to climb up, or get out of the window at the top of the top level of the house and kind of climb down, and she gets onto one of these old dead horses and rides off. And so, of course, they gain chase, and all of this leads into the town. And so they ultimately surround this town, and you got your cast of characters that will sort of be bound in together, that will begin to fight these things back, and ultimately it becomes a siege movie in the sense that your survivors, the townsfolk, many of them, you're thought and believed that they have escaped. A good group of them have escaped. You find out their demise a little bit later on, but the group that we're with for the whole movie finds safety in a church, and basically, bars everything, boards everything up and everything. And so it becomes pretty much a siege movie from there on out. And you do have a good group, a pretty solid group of characters that a lot of just interesting dynamics. This Vivian girl, man, there's like three guys that are key. The mayor, of course, who assumably is going to marry her. One of his henchmen, who has had it for her, and of course Jack, who really is our protagonist, our hero of the film. And so they're all sort of vying for her attention, but she more than anyone wants to be with Jack. And so that's sort of where that is headed. And Murdo, he will finally get back there. Him and the girl that escapes that one house earlier on, he actually knows of a way to get out of there, and that will have its own interesting end. I'll leave it at there. And really, ultimately, in the end itself really sets itself off differently from the first one. The first one has this insane, really, really awesome atmospheric sense of apocalyptic ending where man, it's unleashed, man. There's nothing that's going to stop this thing. The second one, though, interestingly enough, has a much different ending, and all I'll say is it borrows from Hitchcock in a really, really interesting way. And of course, with the siege element, it's borrowed from George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and so there's a bit of borrowing here, but ultimately a very well executed. Now, Amando de Ossorio worked a full-time job, mostly in radio, and so he had 4 weeks vacation, I think, that he took throughout the year. So he literally would take those 4 weeks and spend those 4 weeks making these movies. And so, 1 week, 1 year, these 4 weeks would be devoted to the Tombs of the Blind Dead. The next year, the 4 weeks would be devoted to his second entry, and then ultimately he got a chance to do the third, and then ultimately, with a much bigger budget, a fourth really nice installment. But here is one who had a guy who had a love of cinema, and even though he was somewhat tied down by life's obligations, he was able to make it work in a really, truly fantastic way. And his legacy that he lives, not just the Tombs of the Blind Dead movies, but other movies that he also directed, really are a very, very significant legacy of filmmaking, and one underneath offers somewhat of a comment on at least the second one for sure, on the regime that was Franco in Spain. And so these movies really do take advantage of an interesting set of mythos in which he creates a very unique sort of monster, which is these zombified blind dead, these Templar Knights, and just aesthetically how they look, and the horses they ride, and because they don't have no eyesight, they generally, but it changes throughout the movies, go off on sound and extra hypersensitivity to sound. But they're able to get their prey. There's no doubt about that. They do get their prey in a very, very interestingly atmospheric and sometimes very creepy way. And so anyways, Return of the Blind Dead, man, 1973. I don't think I mentioned that. These are all in the early 70s, and I don't think I mentioned the fact that this is week 499. Sort of backtrack now a little bit. And but a very, very worthy. We often talk about sequels and those that live up to the original, and they even at times maybe top the original, or at least arguably you could make an argument that even by a hair length they might just surpass. And this is one of those that offers up a unique argument. It definitely does live up to the first one. There's no doubt about that. Does it top it? It does in some people's minds. And then, as I said, the third entry is a bit of a, it's sort of the one that everyone sort of, but it takes place on a ghost ship, which offers its own unique opportunities and atmosphere. Its biggest problem was lack of money. Most likely, I would say lack of money. But the fourth one, he is able to bounce back in a huge way. And so ultimately in the end, man, if you've never heard of Tombs of the Blind Dead, Amando de Ossorio from the early 70s, man, you oughta try. Now, I missed the coffin box. I never did get my hands on that. So I got 3 from Blue Underground and 1 from Shout, or Scream Factory, if you will. And if you, by chance, have a stack of Gore Zones, if you have this one, there is an incredible article in there on Amando de Ossorio and the Tombs of the Blind Dead. That is just really, 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 really excellent. Some good stuff. And this is what I'm talking about, the Knights, right? That picture is from the third one. Give you one little look before I get out of here. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? And so just, a little bit of a revisiting of the Blind Dead films and the work of Amando de Ossorio, which needs to be seen if you've never seen it. And the films ought to be, if you're a horror film collector, they ought to be in your collection for sure, without a doubt. Without doubt. Oh, and one last little thing. Night of the Seagulls. If you're familiar with the Hysteria Continues podcast, they do have a commentary track on here that is quite excellent. Quite. Actually, not the Hysteria Continues. I'm so sorry. I'm glad I caught that. It's the Nashi cast. If you're familiar with the Nashi cast, now Hysteria Continues do commentary tracks and have done quite a few, but their main thing is our slasher movies and stuff. Um, the Nashi cast is all about Paul Nashi, and that was the name I couldn't think of earlier. But they were very, very fortunate to get the commentary track on Night of the Seagulls. And they have covered episodes 1, 2, and 3 of these films in their archives. You can find them in their archives of their podcast, the Nashi cast. Excellent stuff, man. I'm glad I caught that error. So hopefully you did too before you tuned out. Yeah, anyways, before I stumble on my words anymore, let's close this out. And as always, first of all, check it out. Second of all, go Bills.